Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Slater and we're going to do some applications of system of equations today. First off, whenever you do word problems, let's go ahead and make sure you're very detailed with how you're labeling, and then you're always going to have two equations. So keep those two things in mind when you begin on your own. So for the first one, we are finding the numbers. So what does that mean? That means we're going to have an x value and a y value. We'll just call x our first number, and then y will be our second number. Okay, so that's what I mean by labeling. Get yourself organized. The second part is taking the two sentences given and come up with the equation of them. Look for keywords like sum and is. Those are two things that mean addition, and the other one means equal sign. So we're going to take the sum of the two numbers and set it equal to, because of the word is, negative 63. And then the second equation, it says the first number minus the second number is negative 41. So again, look for those key words along the way. The first number is x minus the second number, which is y, equals a negative 41. Now if you notice, it's going to look a lot like what we talked about yesterday with an elimination method, because we can now go right to adding both equations and solving for x and for y. So let's go ahead and do that. Add the two of them. You get 2x equals 4, and then 0, 1, so a negative 104. And if you divide both sides by 2, we end up with a negative 52. And if you take negative 52 and plug it in for y, it would be x. It would be negative 52 plus y equals a negative 63. And then after you add both sides with a 52, you end up with a negative 11. So to answer the question, find the numbers. Those two numbers are negative 52 and negative 11. Okay, so I want you to push pause and make sure you have all that written down, and then also try the next one. So did you label? That's the first thing. We are again looking for the numbers. So there are two numbers out there. So I'm going to call one of them the first number, and here is the second number is going to be y. And you can always refer back to that along the way. All right, now we look for the keywords. The difference of two numbers and is. The difference between two numbers. So we're going to subtract them. Is means equal, 11. And then the second part, it says twice the smaller number plus 3 times the larger number is 23. Okay, so this takes a little bit of thinking here. Okay, which one is our larger number? Well, the way we use it on the first one, the only way that this could be a positive number is if x was the largest number. Now, I didn't know that when I first wrote it down, but that's the only way that this is possible, that you could get a positive 11. So I'm going to go ahead and label this a little more and put this is my largest number and this is my smallest number. Okay, so now let's go back to what I have circled in green. Twice the smaller number, so now that's going to be 2y, plus, there's a key word, 3 times the larger number, which is x, equals 123. So, here are the two equations. And before you begin solving, look at the order, and you'll notice that the x's and the y's are switched around. So that would be something else to do before you begin. So we have 3x plus 2y, and then all of that. Okay, so go ahead and push pause and solve, and then you'll check your answer. Okay, go ahead and check your answer. You may have eliminated x instead, which is fine. You would have came up with the y value first and then the x, but it's still the same. Now, if you're going to check your answer, go back to the original and see if your answers make any sense. For example, the original problem says the difference between the two numbers is 11. So when you subtract those, you get 11. Yes, so that's okay. And then it says twice the smaller plus 3 times the larger is 123. 2 times the smaller, 2 times the smaller plus 3 times the larger equals 123. So you can solve that, and that's 27, so that's 6 and 8. And when you add those together, you end up with 123. So that makes sense, and it all adds together. So you can always just double check to see if it makes sense. All right, let's go on to the next one. Okay, let's begin by labeling. Notice what we have to find. It says find the amount invested at each rate. So that means that there is going to be 2 investments. So we're going to call this one the first investment. And then the next one is going to be your second investment. And we're going to be talking about money. So we're going to be referring back to that. 2 investments, 2 different investments were made totaling 15,000. So totaling mean they're going to be added together. Okay, the second sentence, it's saying for a certain year these investments yielded 14.32 in simple interest. Well, we can't do anything much with that now until you read the next sentence, which said part of that 15,000 was invested at 9% and at 10%. So this next equation is all about the interest. And for 9%, we should always use decimal. And for 10%, we should always use decimal. So just keep that in mind when you're writing it. All right, so let's get the equation. It's saying the investments, we have the first one is at 9%. So you'd write it like that. The next one was at 10%. So we'd write it like that. And then the last number, it says that we are yielding, which just means that we have made the highest that we can make from that. It yields 1432. So that's the highest we can make off of interest, 1432. Okay, so what we're going to do now is solve the system of equations. And before I let you go off and do this on your own, the second equation, because it has decimals, highly suggest you multiply by 100 first. That way you don't have to worry about the decimal. So then that would be 9x plus 10y equals 143,200. And then solve. So take some time to do that. All right, so let's check what you have so far. We ended with the equations in red. And I chose to multiply by -10. You didn't have to go that route. And then when I chose to go by -10, then we had things cancel, but the y's were eliminated. So you ended up with -x equals -6,800. So what that means is one investment, the first investment was 6,800. And if I want to find out what the second investment was, I know that x plus y have to equal 15,000. So all I have to do is take the 6,800 and plug it in for x. Okay, so then our final answer, then 15,123 minus 6,800 for an answer of 8,200. Okay, so those are your 2 investments, and make sure it makes sense. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so let's label first, looking at what we have to find, how many of each kind were sold. So they're talking about the scarves. So you have X is going to equal the white scarves, and Y is going to equal the printed ones. Okay, so we'll refer back to that. It says what kind, and that's how I knew to go back to what the original sentence was saying. All right, now let's go to our setup. First question, our first sentence says, 1 week a business sold 40 scarves. So those 40 would have to be separated into x plus y equals 40 because we don't know how many of each were sold. The next sentence, it is saying the white ones were $4.95, the printed ones were $7.95, and they sold a total of 282. So those 3 things that I've circled in purple all go together because this would be $4.95x, because you always would multiply the amount they sold times how much you make off each one of them, plus $7.95y equals 40. No, it doesn't. It equals 282. This whole equation is related to money, and this one is, the red one is related to how many scarves there are. So again, I want you to solve this one, and if you want to get rid of the decimal, you may do so by multiplying through by 100, and then you can solve it a different way. Go ahead and push pause and do that. All right, so let's see what you have so far. I'm decided to multiply by negative 495. You may have done by negative 795 just to get it to eliminate. The equations, you can see I multiplied through. I end up with eliminating the x's, and that's going to be 795 minus 495. So that's 300 y, and then 28200 minus 19800 gives you an answer of 8400. And if you divide that by 300, you end up with 28. So if there are 28 printed scarves, and if you take that and plug it back in for the x plus y equals 40, you know that x plus 28 equals 40, and then x equals, if you subtract it, you get 12. So there's 12 white scarves. And that finishes it up. And then you go back and make sure it makes sense. Okay, the next one is about a little bit of geometry. We have to know the perimeter formula before we can begin. And on any rectangle, does it say this is a rectangle? Not really. Okay, so I'd have to give you more information. So they're saying the perimeter of this rectangular lot is 190 meters. And then we have the width and the length. And we have to define the dimensions. So I'm going to say perimeter equals 2L plus 2W, because the definition of perimeter is the lengths of the sides added together. And if it's a rectangle, these two opposite sides are equal to each other, and then the other two sides are equal to each other. So I'm going to put tick marks in there to show that. So there's our start. We need to know the formula. And then L is going to be our length. So this would be considered part of the table. And W is the width. And let's begin. So those are the three things you would need to know. Okay, so circling the first one, the perimeter is 190. So we have 2L plus 2W equals 190. And then you also know that the width is 1/4 of the length. So width equals 1/4 of the length. And that's exactly how it's read. Look for those key words. And it looks like substitution method would be the fastest way to go here because it's already set up that way. So 1/4 L is going to replace W. So you have 2L plus 2 times 1/4 L equals 190. Go ahead and push pause and solve. All right, now that you're back, check your answer. You get 1/2 L equals 190. 2.5 L equals 190. So if I take 190 and then divide it by 2.5, I end up with a length of 76. And then I can always take that and plug it back in to one of the original formulas. W equaled 1/4 L. So that means it'd be 1/4 of 76. And 1/4 of that is 19. So the width would be 19. And both of these would be meters. Okay, so that does it for day 1 of 4.3 notes.